One of the great challenges in this world is
Hello, MMA with friends. UFC 249 was supposed to be upon us. Does anybody know what's going on? Well, I'm going to explain to you guys. I actually know exactly what is going on. And maybe some of you know this already. But for a lot of you, it is not what you think. Now, sorry if I trolled anyone. Sorry if I offended anyone by insinuating that Khabib Nurmagomedov could possibly be scared. I will guarantee you that is not the reason that he is not there. Let's go through some of the comments. First, give some people some credit for coming in early. Tara Bascaron, it's Tony time. I love Tony Ferguson. I love both of these guys. That's what's so insane about this fight. And don't give up a hope that this fight is going to happen. Don't give up hope that this fight is going to happen on April 18th. And I'm going to give you guys a couple of scenarios, a couple of things that I know. I got a call this morning, and then I'm just going to give you a couple of swags, just scientific, wild-ass guesses off the top of my head as to what the hell the UFC and Dana White could be doing here. But just work with me on this one. Some of these might be a bit crazy. But some of this stuff is stuff that I actually know. Most of this stuff is, if you guys have been reading MMA Junkie, I believe broke it, some other things. It is public news now. It wasn't public news when I got the news this morning. But let's go through this. Omar says, disrespectful, to be honest, undefeated professional fighter, scared, come on, dude. Okay, maybe I was a bit disrespectful to Khabib. But everybody was wondering what's going on. I didn't say he was scared. That's one conclusion that people could come to. And PBR Street Gang with the $4.99 donation. Dude is always coming through with the big donations. PBR Street Gang, my buddy, my friend. Thank you very much, sir. And I don't know if any of you guys recognized it, but I did give some props, I guess, kind of. Some props, at least to, maybe not to Khabib, but to a Russian composer. The Countdown song. The composer, if you recognized him, that was the great Russian composer Tchaikovsky. I'm a big fan. YTB Gameplay says he is scared. Thank you, First Last. It says classy music. I'm a fan of Tony. No way Khabib is scared. You are right. Less than 3 weeks till the fight, and he leaves the country. Says Cassidy. First Last, and the hard and easy thing about this fight is both guys are so lovable. Absolutely. Drew Owens Khabib flew to Russia knowing the borders were going to be closed. 3 weeks to go when he leaves. He flat out knew the borders were closed. There's more to the story. There's much, much more to this story than this, Drew. And I'm going to give you guys the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would have said back in the day, here in a minute. But he would have been stuck in the U.S. after the fight. I'm no Khabib fan, but some things are more important than MMA, and family is one of them. I don't disagree with you on that tale of the tape, but that is also not what happened. Where did you reckon the fight should happen? I would have liked to have seen it happen in the United States, the ABAC Center or wherever. But Seven says, Lego boss, hell yeah, PBR. Khabib is scared. Stop it, Mike. He is not scared, my rules. I did say that, and for anybody that was thrown off by that and they were offended by it, guys, trust me, I have great respect for Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time. I am a huge fan. And that's just, one possibility of things that people were thinking. Possibly. But also trust me that I know Khabib Nurmagomedov is scared of no man. And the guy he's got morals of steel. People talk about, some people having balls of steel. When you talk about my respect for Khabib Nurmagomedov, this guy has morals of steel. I don't think I've ever seen an athlete with the kind of morals that Khabib Nurmagomedov has. He told the Las Vegas Commission when they fined him, when they took, $3 million or whatever, he said, I don't care, take all my money, I don't care about my money. He said, I don't care about the money. He said, take it. When they talked about him making over $100 million to fight Conor McGregor, he said, I don't want to fight Conor McGregor. He said, what do I need with $100 million? He said, why would you give that to me? Why don't you give it to somebody who needs it? I don't need $100 million. That's crazy talk. I'm not going to for a second pretend like I would not fight anyone in the world or do just about anything you can possibly think of for $100 million. That is, not just life-changing money for you, but for your entire family line. I don't need to tell you guys that. Now, Khabib having morals of steel, I highly disagree with. Wow. Well, everybody's entitled to their opinion, tell the tape. Jumped out of the cage and kicked someone. Hello. Well, that was not a smart decision. I also think a lot of people would have done that when Conor pushed him to the degree that he had, some of the things that he had said. I'm not going to justify that, though, so fair enough. But I do believe he's done, a lot of moral things. And there is never, I can't think of in the history of the sport, that there has ever been a more deserving challenger that has still not fought for a title than El Cucuy Tony Ferguson. Are you kidding me? This guy, no matter what Khabib says about him, no matter what anybody says about him, you cannot help but respect him. You couldn't lie that you didn't respect that guy. Nobody can. I mean, Khabib can say he's weird, he's strange, whatever. He also says that, he respects the hell out of him. Even as Tony, is insulting him and saying all these things. I mean, Tony Ferguson, he fought and clawed to get to the top like maybe nobody in the history of the sport. I mean, it's absolutely insane. The track that guy has been on, the road to the title for that guy. Khabib, I don't think is scared, but he definitely knows Tony is a real threat. Absolutely. Will Tony fight Justin, win, and later be stripped? I have some scenarios, I have some facts, and then I have some scenarios that you guys may not like. I don't like, but some that possibly could come to fruition. You would jump out of the cage and kick someone because of what Conor did? In my eyes, Tony is and has been the real champion since Kevin Lee fight. Tara, I'm not saying necessarily I would or I wouldn't. I mean, I don't know, but I'm not a deeply religious guy like Khabib Nurmagomedov. I've been insulted quite a bit in American culture in my life. I mean, you get insulted on the basketball court when I was growing up. I mean, you know, how many of you guys haven't had horrendous things said to you on the basketball court or in the gym, or things that, you know, we don't really think of them being as part of American culture, but they are. They're certainly not, you know, part of Russian culture or part of Muslim culture, or some of these other things. They're kind of part of American culture, and a lot of other cultures, it doesn't mesh with them well. I grew up in Walla Walla, Washington. So when I was in 4th grade, we moved from the more well-off side of town over to the, I would say, you know, not so well-off side of town. But it was also the minority side of the town, predominantly Hispanic, some Russians. But as a white kid in 4th grade, I was definitely the minority. And I will tell you, they did not take trash talk. Especially the first generation immigrants, first and second, they did not take trash talk the same way me and my friends have been before. I remember telling a kid, I had just watched, I want to say it was Back to the Future. This is in 4th grade. And I tell this kid, I said, your mama's a snowblower. It's a stupid insult. In 4th grade, and I heard it in a movie. And this kid immediately cracked me in the nose. And I mean, he busted my nose open. So I'm bleeding, you know, pretty good from this. And I didn't think I had really said anything too much to insult the guy. But I learned a couple of times, to be honest, that, you know, a lot of these first generation immigrants and things, they did not take these insults the same. They took the words more seriously than I did and some of my friends did. It's the biggest fight in UFC history, and he ruined it. In my eyes, Tony is and has been the real champ. It's a cursed fight. Thank you again, PBR Street Gang. Yet another donation from PBR Street Gang. Thank you, sir. And I will tell you guys, in all honesty and sincerity, I've missed doing this. I've missed not having the fights and not just watching them. I really miss interacting with you guys. I've wondered how a lot of you guys are doing through everything that's going on. You know, I worried, does everybody still have their jobs? Is everyone healthy? You know, are people stuck anywhere? Is anyone, you know, going mentally nuts, being quarantined? I shouldn't, for lack of a better word, I could come up with a better word than that, but, you know, stir crazy, having issues sleeping. You know, I've had a couple of those nights. At the very beginning, I had a couple nights where I was really having some issues sleeping and things. I've done well with this since the first couple nights. I think, as you know, is about as well as we can be expected to. But I just hope you guys are doing very well. I hope you're finding ways to distract yourself, not read too much of the news and all that stuff, and have enough Scots to last till the end of time. That's a good tip, PBR. Good for you. How Khabib won the actual title against Raging Al, only man in top 10, 155ers to lose to Cowboy. Thank you, Tara. So, all right, there's only 8 of you in here watching right now. I didn't want to have to repeat myself a whole lot, but this morning, and you can imagine, I was actually woken up this morning. You guys seen that I posted in the community very early. But I was actually woken up this morning, or about the time I was getting up, about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I got a message. I got a call that Khabib Nurmagomedov was stuck outside of the United States. And then a little later on, and then I got a message that Tony Ferguson was possibly being offered Justin Gaethje. This is from a source that has been reputable in the past. I can't think of a time where they've really steered me wrong. This is the same source that told me that GSP was interested in the Khabib fight. A lot of people jumped on me for that. I got a lot of criticism for that, and GSP came out later after retirement saying, yes, I did ask for the fight. And Dana said he didn't want to give it to me because he didn't want to see me win another championship and vacate it. Tony versus Justin would be great. I don't want to see Tony versus Justin. I want to see the fight, but there's a lot of other reasons I don't want to see it. I'm going to go over those here in a minute. And so this is what happened. I have more of this now. This is actually an article from MMA Junkie. Credit to Tristan Critchfield over there at MMA Junkie. So this is exactly what happened. And according to a live video translation via RT Sport, which is Russia Today Sport, reigning lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov revealed his predicament during an Instagram live video translation via RT Sport today. Nurmagomedov spent part of his camp at AKA in San Jose, California, but returned to Russia last week upon learning that the promotion had designs on moving UFC 249 to Abu Dhabi. So the UFC came to Khabib Nurmagomedov and they said, hey, we're thinking about having UFC 249 in Abu Dhabi. And this is pretty much a set thing. This is the 99% thing that Dana White was talking about. I don't know if you guys heard him say, we have a location. We're not letting you know what it is, but it's 99%. We're 99% sure. This was the 99% location, is Abu Dhabi. So he said we were training in the AKA without any information regarding the fight, where and how it's going to happen. Then the UFC told us that the fight 100%, so this is 100%, isn't happening in the States. Nobody's going to take it in the States. They're not even going to let them have it in the Apex Center in Las Vegas. So not going to happen in the States. And then they say 99% that it will happen in the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi. This is according to Khabib Nurmagomedov, who I 100% believe. So after talking to the UFC, we decided to fly over to the Emirates a month before the fight. I don't remember the exact date. It was the 19th or the 20th. I'll have to check it. But when we landed in Emirates, we learned that they are going to close borders. And no one will be able to leave or fly in, with exception for residents. So obviously Khabib Nurmagomedov is not a resident of the United Arab Emirates, and I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure that if there are any UFC fighters that are residents of the United Arab Emirates. You got to have a pretty nice paycheck, I think, to be a resident there. So we said, so we had to fly back to Russia. Currently, I am in Dagestan, and I am training and preparing every day. Although I don't know what I am preparing for. Because after we came to Russia, we also learned that the borders are going to be locked. Same like in the States, same like in Europe, Emirates, everywhere. The whole world is in quarantine right now. Russia closed its borders as of Monday to help, and that's why this news came out this morning, to help contain the spread of course, this virus that shall go name, that we all want to light on fire and see burn in hell. As reported in more than 1,800 reported cases in the country as of this writing. of course, Nurmagomedov was scheduled to face Tony Ferguson for the 5th time. So there it is. No fault on Khabib Nurmagomedov. What he's saying is the UFC told him 99% chance we're having this in the United Arab Emirates. And they asked him. He asked them, should I fly to the United Arab Emirates? Is this a good idea? They were confident enough to say, yes, Khabib, jump on a plane and fly to the United Arab Emirates. So far, Khabib has done absolutely nothing wrong. He gets there. He realizes that once he gets in there, they're about to lock down. Unless you're a resident, you will not be allowed in or out. So even if he's there to train, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to get everybody else there. And if they are, him and every single other fighter on that card and Dana White are going to be trapped in the United Arab Emirates for an undisclosed amount of time. I mean, this could be well over 30 days. We're on, more than about another 45-day quarantine here in the United States, and I would not be surprised to see that even extended. Tony is probably walking to Russia as we speak. Imagine what Tony would have done to Max Holloway. Max would have died. Oh, geez. So that's a thing, too. When Tony found out about this, he came out right away on Twitter and said, and I don't know if he had all the facts. I'm assuming maybe he didn't yet. He said, you can't hide in Russia from this ass whooping. He says, I will find you. Well, I don't know. I don't think he's going to be able to break into Russia anytime soon. But if anybody can do it, it's Tony Ferguson. That is great. Yeah, I think it would take a little while to walk there, Drew. But maybe a private plane. Come on, Vladimir Putin, can we make this happen? So other scenarios of this. First, let me talk about why I don't want to see Justin Gaethje and Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson has won how many fights? He's win undefeated trying to get a title shot. Is it 12, 13? I lose track. The guy's won so many damn fights since he's lost. I believe the only other guys in the UFC that at least have won them in the UFC that have that long a streak are Khabib himself and John Jones. I don't think that there's a longer win streak in the UFC. If there is, it can't be much longer. So, Justin Gaethje, I would love to see him get a title shot as well. He had talked about wanting the title shot, saying that he didn't want to fight until he was getting the title shot. And, I'm on board with Gaethje until you talk about Tony Ferguson, and that guy's just way, 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 way more deserving. Justin Gaethje had 3 incredible highlight reel victories in a row that under normal circumstances I wouldn't argue with getting a title shot. But Tony Ferguson, and dude's won like 13, 14 in a row. Let's get real here. By the time Tony fights Khabib, he'll be aged past his prime. Tony, against any real good boxer or power puncher, worries me. So here's the thing with Gaethje. Yes, he's an extremely dangerous opponent. Good point, Finn Raider. Extremely dangerous. I think the guy can beat anybody on any given Saturday. Outside of maybe Khabib Nurmagomedov, I'm not sure how he would match up against Khabib. Because we haven't seen this wrestling, this great wrestling that is spoke of about him. We've seen it in World Series of Fighting. We haven't really seen the guy wrestle in a long time. And I would go to the words of Josh Koscheck. Josh Koscheck, years back, somebody asked him, why don't you shoot? Why didn't you shoot and get the takedowns? I think it was against George St. Pierre, and he was hurting. He had his back was hurting and different things. And they're like, you were this incredible collegiate wrestler, national champion, and all this stuff. And he says, I was a national champion. He said, it had been like 7 years ago. He goes, that was a very, very long time ago, and I am nowhere near that level. Now, I don't know what level Justin Gaethje's wrestling is today. But from I have nothing from my sources to either confirm or deny that his wrestling is on the level that it was when he was wrestling competitively. And I would assume, like Ben Askren and a lot of other wrestlers, as the age that maybe he's lost the step. Maybe he's still a really good wrestler, but maybe he's lost the step. Tony Ferguson would pipe up Max Holloway, easy work. Luckily, Max didn't fight Tony or Khabib. Tony Ferguson would outwork anyone and has the best all-around fighting game by far. Like I've said before, I'm a big fan of both guys. And here is the reason I really, and you guys are smart. You guys have already thought of this, I'm sure some, and maybe some of you, we just don't want to think of it. I don't really want to think of it. But what happens if Justin Gaethje defeats Tony Ferguson? Justin Gaethje was supposed to fight Conor McGregor next. The biggest fight, money-wise, in the UFC. I know some people will probably argue with me, but there's so many casuals out there. 2.5 million pay-per-view buys. Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Conor McGregor one mate. Do you think Dana White wouldn't like an excuse to make that fight again? If I'm Tony Ferguson, if Khabib Nurmagomedov is not my dance partner, I'm not fighting any of these dangerous sons of bitches. And I'm going to insist that you pay me. You need to cut me a check. You need to cut Tony Ferguson a check. And it needs to be 6 figures. I think for this, he should get 6 figures, and he shouldn't have to fight. I think Khabib Nurmagomedov should also get paid for his training and everything that's going on, for the inconveniences of ending up over in the United Arab Emirates and back over there in Russia. But I have a much more diabolical, something much more diabolical came into my head through all this. I think Gaethje is a scary matchup he's a scary matchup for anybody. The dude is super dangerous. I cannot deny that. Tony wouldn't have a chance to outwork Khabib. Tony will be on his back getting pounded. Dude is very good off his back, though, and that's one of the things that makes that matchup so intriguing. Tony will be here longer than Khabib and Conor and Justin. Well, Khabib, I don't think, wants a whole lot more fights. Gaethje he talked about retiring if he didn't get a title shot. Before he went on that long run, he was already talking about retirement. He's not even quite 30 years old. He may have just turned 30. He's right around 30. But he had taken so much damage because of his style of fighting. And then, he's been so much more successful in his last 3 fights. He's been able to switch some things up, especially that Edson Barbosa fight. That was terrifying, what he did to Edson. That maybe he figured, okay, maybe I have a little more longevity. Now, Justin would gas against Tony quick. Justin carries a lot of muscle. He definitely does, but you think about what he did to Edson Barbosa. And I don't know. I would favor... that's a tough one. I think I would favor Tony in it. But I'm not saying anybody's a for sure lock in this one. But humor me here for a moment. And I am going to tell you one plot that popped into my head that could be one of the most diabolical, probably is the most diabolical thing that I have thought of coming into this fight. This thing's been canceled 4 times. He poked Barboza's eye. What's up, Tell with the tape? Why don't I remember that? I know I called that fight. I don't remember. Did they give him a moment to rest, or did Justin just keep going? I don't recall that, honestly, for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. Justin Gaethje versus Dustin. Do you think Ferguson will let him rest? Good point. Dustin's another name that jumped in there. He volunteered right away to fight Tony Ferguson. It's not happening. Dustin Poirier, no disrespect to Dustin Poirier. I'm not the one who makes the rankings. I'm not the one who sells the fights. But he's just not a big enough name to save this card. They would cancel the card before they had Dustin Poirier in the main event. Now, of course, Jorge Masvidal has jumped out there. Masvidal versus Usman, a great fight. So if they even have Masvidal versus Usman as the main event for UFC 249, I am extremely interested. And put Tony Ferguson versus Khabib on the back burner and see if you can coax Justin Gaethje to fight Dustin Poirier. I don't know how competitive a fight that would be, but it's putting 2 really good fighters out there. So the diabolical situation I'm talking about, Finn Raiders, remember when Tony Ferguson tripped over the cord, and remember exactly when they announced. Does anybody remember when they announced that Tony Ferguson tripped over that cord? Because none of us believed it. None of us believed that Tony Ferguson tripped over this cord. It was about almost exactly a year ago. Masvidal versus Ferguson, BMF. Both make 155.70. Make it work. Wow, what a fight. Main event of this card. That's one I had thought about too. That's a great fight for the BMF. Yes, Tell the tape. You are correct. It was on April Fool's Day. We are about 36 hours from April Fool's Day. And I'm not saying I think this is what's happening. Dana White hasn't exactly been, had an oh shit moment over this announcement, though. And did they send Khabib Nurmagomedov all the way to the United Arab Emirates and send no one else? They said no one else. Just Khabib. For anybody that thinks the UFC is beyond this, I want to remind you of them showing Conor McGregor throwing the dolly through the window of that bus 1 million times to sell that fight. I want to remind you of all the publicity they gave of Nate Diaz's vegan vitamins to sell the BMF fight. I'm not saying I think for sure that, necessarily that this is what's happening, but the UFC, Dana White, they are by no means beyond this being an April Fool's joke. I don't know if Khabib Nurmagomedov will go along. I don't know if anybody else has verified that Khabib Nurmagomedov. No, I do not think they tripped Tony on purpose. No, absolutely not. Tell with the tape. So this is what happened last year. When Tony tripped on the wire, I believe they knew he was going to be out around a week. It was a long time. And they kept it secret for about a week, all the way up to April Fool's Day, so they could announce it on April Fool's Day. Okay, I got you. And, I mean, if you don't think that they announced that on April Fool's Day to get some publicity, come on. I mean, is it in poor taste? You could argue that. Is it a smart business move if you're not going to be able to have the fight anyways? Obviously, it gets a lot of attention. And Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Al Iaquinta sold a hell of a lot more pay-per-views than I think anyone expected. I mean, most people didn't even know who Al Iaquinta outside of the hardcores was going into that fight, but there was a lot of interest going into that fight. It got a lot of views here on this channel. It was one of the most viewed fight companions we've ever had was Khabib versus Al Iaquinta, which is super strange. Global pandemic isn't the time for April Fool's jokes. That's kind of that was kind of my thought to a point, but, at the same time, joking about canceling this fight for a fifth time is not really the time for April Fool's jokes either. Obviously, the global pandemic is much more serious. But, I could see them thinking, what's the harm letting everybody for 36 hours thinking that Khabib Nurmagomedov is in the United Arab Emirates? Because this year, you got to think, with everything going on, I had thought about this. I knew April Fool's was coming up, and I'm just like, I really can't do anything to everybody this year. It's going to have to wait till next year. Because the real, what's going on right now is way too serious. And, to upset anybody, what are you going to do that's more shocking than real life, for one thing, right now? What are you possibly going to do outside of the situation that we are in? That's obviously no joke. I don't think anybody's saying, that there would be any kind of April Fool's joke around, something like that. But for the UFC to let everybody suspend their belief for 36 hours and say, Khabib Nurmagomedov is stuck in Russia and he's not going to be able to get the fight, that's going to get a lot of publicity. It's going to get a lot of publicity. And I'm hoping that that's the case. Because that's the fight I want to see. Khabib versus Tony. I'm not sure where it would happen. I'm still holding out hope that it will happen. But man, you never know. You never know. Maybe Vladimir Putin. We still have 3 weeks. Maybe Vladimir Putin flies everybody in. You're in Russia. You got a guy that, he has complete control of the country. He could definitely give you the executive order and say, hey, we're going to let a private plane come in. We're going to let Dana White come in. We're going to let Tony Ferguson. Whether you have just one fight, which I've heard talked about, or a whole card. I don't know what you would do there. I think people probably buy it either way. I don't like the idea of just having one fight on a pay-per-view like boxing does. Especially just 25-minute fight. I think it's a horrible precedence to set. But in these times, maybe, they get a bye. This is not from a source. This is just a complete wild-ass guess. My source told me that Khabib Nurmagomedov, that they had heard, and the UFC, they could have, they're not going to tell their employees probably. I don't imagine Dana White would, if, on by chance that this did happen to be a joke, I don't think Dana White's going to let a lot of people know. And even including this guy that I know. And all he did was he let me know, 10 hours before it was reported to the public, that Khabib Nurmagomedov was supposedly in Russia. And the more I let this stew, the more I think about it just during this stream, the more I start to think that it's a possibility that we get Khabib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson. And how we get it, I don't know. Maybe it is in the United Arab Emirates. I didn't verify that their borders are closed. That's something that's pretty easily verified. So, I mean, if they were lying about that, I guess that's pretty easily fact-checked. But for Vladimir Putin, to say that Vladimir Putin doesn't have the power, there's 1,800 confirmed cases, supposedly, of COVID-19 in all of Russia. And I'm not saying that that's not serious and that they're not locking down and that wouldn't be a smart thing to do. But there's over 1,800 just in Washington State. I think I don't remember what they said the number was, but they could be 100,000 in New York or more. So if they have 1,800 cases in Russia, I could definitely see Vladimir Putin saying, hey, you give us a great show. Give us the money you were going to give United Arab Emirates or whatever it is. This is going to be huge for Russia to have this event here, whether it's with people or not. I could see Vladimir Putin saying, hey, either you can bring Tony in, he can bring his trainers in and things, Dana can come, we may or may not need Bruce Buffer, we don't actually need him, maybe you let him come, maybe you don't, and you have just those two guys fight, or you have a card where it's all Russian fighters, all guys that are already there maybe. There's definitely enough good fighters in Russia. Probably a lot of them that are stuck there right now that are in the UFC or in Bellator or in other reputable leagues that you could put together an 11, 12 fight card. Or you could fly some of the fighters that were going to be on that card. Hopefully Jessica Andrade and Rose Namajunas as well, which were the scheduled co-main event. But this could go so many ways. The one thing that I don't want to see, and let me know if you guys are with me on this, but the one thing that I don't want to see on April 18th is Tony Ferguson fighting anyone but Khabib Nurmagomedov. You cannot do that to that guy. He says champ shit only. If I'm him, you got to stand by your guns. And I say you got to pay that guy for everything that he went through. Stripping him of the interim belt when he was injured during media for the UFC. During media for the UFC, and they stripped this guy. I mean, they didn't rip it out of his hands. You've seen him show up at press conferences and things with it. But he's also not getting pay-per-view points for having a championship belt, which, by the way, I just learned this year that interim champions actually get pay-per-view points. So on the rare occasion that an interim champion fights and it's not for the championship yet, they get pay-per-view points. So they do try to treat it like a real title. So this whole thing is just such a conundrum. So many possibilities of where this could go. And this whole thing could get canceled. There's possibly, there's still a great possibility that we don't get a card at all. We don't get a card at all? I don't know. Khabib said in his video from Russia, with love, sorry for the pun, but he said UFC 249 is going on with or without me. I'm training. I'm not sure what I'm training for, if I'm training for anything. He doesn't seem freaked out. Dana doesn't seem freaked out. Tony, has a funny pun that comes on. So, like I said before, I would have thought maybe they would have waited another day if this was an April Fool's joke, but don't think that that's not a possibility. Don't think that this fight could not still possibly happen. And possibly that Khabib Nurmagomedov is actually still training at AKA and still in the United States. Imagine. Now, some people might be like, oh, they would never do that. How upset people would get. There's no sports going on in the world right now. Imagine the media attention that this would get if they pulled the wool over everyone's eyes. Virus going on, whatever's going on, you can't argue. That's the greatest April Fool's joke of all time. You might as well just cancel the damn holiday. Dana, you win. You win. No, nobody's topping this shit. Not legally, not without going to jail. That's the greatest April Fool's joke of all time. I didn't mean to go an hour without trivia, and I'm sorry for those of you guys that are still watching. I know there's only 6 watching. I did have some trivia prepared. I think I will go through just part of it since I lost a lot of you guys. Kind of got caught up in my own thoughts a little bit there. Everybody refresh your browsers. Let's have a little bit of trivia. And 3, 2, 1. All right, guys. What's up, Robert Christian? Robert Christian, just in time for trivia. What's up, my friend? You missed a lot. You missed a lot, my friend. I will give you a wrap-up here in a minute. I'll wrap up before we go. But there is a lot going on with UFC 249 and possibly a lot that we don't know about. But I got a call from one of my sources this morning, which basically just got me about 8-10 hours ahead of everybody else. All right, question number 1. This fighter recently said he went to jail as a young man for assault, and his mom had to mortgage her house. So this fighter, former champion, got in a fight as a young kid, actually went into jail, and they told him, if you don't want to go on probation, we're not going to put you on probation, we're not going to put this on your record, we don't want to ruin your life. If you pay for this kid's medical bills right away. His mom mortgages the house for $7,000 because she doesn't want to see your kid have a record. The guy has flown straight ever since. But what fighter was arrested for assault and his mom had to put a second mortgage on his house to keep him out of jail and keep him from having a record? I just learned this today, actually. This one surprised me. It was a confession time on the Ariel Helwani show, and it was Daniel Cormier. It's actually Daniel Cormier. That one surprised me. And no, he didn't poke anyone in the eye, as far as I know. But just a little bit of wrap up. Robert Christian real quick, and I'm going to get to the next question for, I don't want to repeat too much for people that have been in here. But what we have gone through so far, I didn't know it till today. I don't know if he'd ever told anybody else until today, Robert, because apparently Ariel Helwani, it was a surprise to him when he told him on the show. So, but this is what's happening if you didn't know already. I'm going to give you the short version. So none of this is Khabib's fault. First off, none of it's Khabib's fault. This is a story that Khabib gave on Instagram in Russian, and it was translated by RT, which is Russia Today Sports. He said that he was training at AKA, and the UFC told him that 100% this UFC is not going to happen in the States. Nobody's going to put it on. They're not going to allow it. And they told him there's a 99% chance. Remember when Dana White talked about 99%? He says there's a 99% chance this fight happens in the United Arab Emirates. So Khabib goes to the UFC and he says, should I fly to the United Arab Emirates? Because I want to be there early training. I want to show up there about a month. And he's saying he showed up around the 19th or 20th, which is also kind of funny that he doesn't know what day he showed up on. I'm going to get back to that here in a minute. But he shows up there and he said he gets there and nobody knew this. They were locking down the United Arab Emirates, and if he didn't leave immediately, he was going to get locked down. Just like the rest of the world is. Nobody's going to be able to come in or out, maybe not even the other fighters, and he's going to be stuck there. So he's like, okay, I got to get the hell out of here. So he wants to come back to the United States. Well, he can't get back to the United States either. This is the story via Khabib's Instagram. So he goes back to Russia. Russia's close to there. He gets to Russia. As soon as he gets into Russia, they lock down the country and they will not let him out. The United Arabs, it was residents only would be allowed to come in during this time. I'm starting to doubt this story a little more the more times I tell it. And we even talked about Robert Christian about this possibly being the most extravagant April Fool's joke in the history of April Fools. I'm not saying I think that's what's happening, but the more I think about this, the more I start to think that there is a possibility that maybe Khabib Nurmagomedov never left the United States at all. All right, before you all think I am crazy, let's jump to trivia question number 2. Just say that's just one thing that popped in my mind. All right, question number 2. What was the first official energy drink of the UFC? Before they did Monster or any of these big ones, they had one. I had never heard of this energy drink before the UFC, before they were official sponsor of the UFC, and they were the official energy drink of the UFC. Actually, a delicious energy drink. When I can find them, I will still grab one. What was the official energy drink of the UFC before they ever had Monster as a sponsor? I believe they are still in business because I see, unless some stores still have some overstock, it is not muscle milk. Before anybody Googles it, I'm just going to give it to you. Xyence. Xyence. If you ever find it, it's a sugar-free energy drink. They have a lime-flavored one. And then they have a mango one it's not bad, but it's not as good as the other two. They have a lime, and then they have it's some kind of berry. I can't remember. I can't believe I can't figure out what it is. It's the best tasting sugar-free energy drink I've ever had. I got some easier ones on here. Robert, question number 3. This former football player commentated in the early UFCs. What former football player commentated in the early UFCs? I'm talking about first 2 or 3. I want to say he commentated for 1 and 2 and maybe 3. I can't remember for sure. But very, very early. Gringo Guerrera, you are correct, sir. The legendary Jim Brown. $1,000 points on the board for the Gringo. Hey, and let's actually keep track of the points for once. think I will do that. Terry Bradshaw would be hilarious commentating. He would either be hilarious or a train wreck, and I'm not sure if the train wreck would be hilarious. But next question. Darn, I couldn't think of it. Yeah, I don't know if I'd be able to think of it if I hadn't wrote the questions either. Sometimes I'll draw a blank. Next question. This former boxing champ threatened rapper Fat Joe with a left hook when he had over 50 men with him. What former boxing champion threatened rapper Fat Joe when he was riding with his crew of over 50 guys? He was about to knock Fat Joe out. Fat Joe had to talk him down. Mike Tyson talked about this recently on his podcast, Hot Boxing. I had already heard the story. They went a bit more in depth because Fat Joe was on Hot Boxing. I have a question. Okay to ask? Yeah, let's get the answer to this one and then throw it out there. One more time. This former boxing champ threatened rapper Fat Joe with a left hook while he had over 50 men with him. It's one of my favorite boxers, Roy Jones Jr. And I learned something else that day, that Roy Jones Jr. had apparently turned down $33 million to fight Mike Tyson. Good guess, Robert Christian. All right, what's the question, PBR? Yeah, trivia question or just a question to ask of me? Either one is good. Fox anchor that did play-by-play for early UFC. While it was on Fox? I'm assuming. Or maybe not. Early UFC was on pay-per-view and then on Spike. Oh, Fox News. Really? I don't know this one. A Fox News anchor that did play-by-play for the early UFC. Had to have been Megyn Kelly, right? I could see Megyn Kelly doing some mad commentating. Well, I'm at a loss on that one, PBR. What's up, Mecca Reynolds? Please make any of these fights happen. I was hoping Khabib, Tony, UFC 249 sometime soon. You never know, Mecca Reynolds. I have a wild theory that it still may be happening. Oh, please let it be Bill O'Reilly. That would be hilarious. I know it's not. But Fox News anchor that did UFC. You stumped me. Brian Kilmeade? Is that the guy's name? Oh, no, that Fox News anchor. Oh! Well, Karen Bryant was on Fox Sports. His name is Brian. I can't even find it on Google, man. They've hidden this guy. We give up. Who is it? I don't watch Fox News. I don't watch MSNBC either, for that matter. But early UFC. Brian Callen never was on Fox News, was he? Yeah, I'm at a loss, man. We give up, PBR. You got us. Ferguson, Gaethje, McGregor, Khabib, Usman, Masvidal, all going to be in the great. Here's what I want to see. I want to see Usman, Masvidal on that card, and I want to see McGregor versus Gaethje, and I want to see Ferguson sit out on the side and wait for Khabib. If we're not going to get Khabib versus Tony, that's what I would like to see, Michael Reynolds. Conor versus Gaethje is an incredible fight. That's a good one. We all know that the winner of that one's going to be in line for a title shot. Both of those guys want a title shot. Usman Masvidal, that fight can happen at any time. That's going to be incredible. And PBR Streaking never gave us the answer. I guess he's not going to give it to us. Brian Smith. Brian Rogers. I'm just going to guess names now. All right, I'm going to throw out the next trivia question, PBR. Sounds good. Yeah, I would pay for... Oh, that's what I said. I said Brian Kilmeade. But I Googled it. All right, next question. How old was Bernard Hopkins when he retired? The great Bernard Hopkins. How old was he when he decided to call it quits? No problem. I did have to Google it. I didn't know it, PBR. When you said to Google it, I Googled it. So, I still have no idea who that is either. How old was the great Bernard Hopkins when he retired? I know we're over an hour here, so I won't drag this out too much. I'll start giving the answers quicker. 54, that was close. Robert Christian, 49. Bernard Hopkins was 49 when he retired. All right, this one should be a speed test, though. BBR Street Gang, 41. No, he fought way after 41. Yeah. Next question. Tyron Woodley and Leon Edwards were scheduled to fight in this city. This should be a speed test. Tyron Woodley and Leon Edwards were scheduled to fight in this city. Yeah, Hopkins was a stud. I don't know if anybody's ever going to repeat that. Robert Christian, you are correct. It is London. We got Gringo Guerrero with 1,000 points on the board and Robert Christian with 1,000 points on the board. Anybody's game. All right, next question. This man questioned Justin Gaethje's intelligence before being brutally knocked out. I want to say he compared him to Fred Flintstone or something, but I'm not sure if that's true. I might be misremembering that. But he questioned Justin Gaethje's intelligence, and then Justin Gaethje absolutely blasted him. Robert Christian, you are correct. James Vick. So Robert, the only one with 2 on the board. PBR Street Gang right behind him. James Vick had a very interesting interview on MMA Junkie. Actually on their last episode, for anybody that's interested. He admitted he had holes in his game, which was, obvious to everybody. Fired his boxing coach. His boxing coach left him. I guess they had a fallout, and he ended up leaving him. Longtime boxing coach. And then he's hired a better boxing coach. So he's taken some time to work on his holes. But he was over in Thailand, training over there. He's been training over in Thailand for quite a while. So I got a lot more respect for James Vick off of that interview. Maybe he can redeem himself. Woodley Edwards was going to be good. Now Woodley Colby. Kevin Lee. Might still be Woodley Edwards. I know they want to get a lot of these. Dana has said he wants to rebook a lot of these fights. So, all right, next question. Question number 8. This popular series, UFC series, seems to have taken the place of The Ultimate Fighter. What new series seems to have taken the place of The Ultimate Fighter? A lot of good fighters have came out of this series. Anybody remember the name of it? My guess holes in game was Kevin Lee. Sorry. Yeah, he might have a few too. James has the intangibles to be a very good fighter. I'm not sure about his chin. But if he gets hit less, obviously that's going to help. PBR streaking. Dana's looking for a fight. Wow, that's a tough one because both of those are actually kind of the right answer. And Robert Christian says a contender series. The contender series is what I was looking for. I don't know if Dana's looking for a fighter both on there, but I can't say one's more right than the other, so I give you guys each 1,000 points. Yeah, because Mickey Gall and a couple other guys came off of Dana's looking for a fight. I don't know that they've canceled that as far as I know. And then Contender Series, of course, they've had Sean O'Malley and quite a few other good fighters come off a Contender. So 3,000 points for Robert Christian, 1,000 points on the board for PBR. And one thing that was talked about, MMA Junkie talked about this, and I think this is something that could possibly happen. They talked about, since they have that Apex Center, and they're going to have so many fights backed up, once this all gets going and they get the ball rolling, they might have a Tuesday night fight with some of these fights that were scheduled for these cards. They mentioned Francis Ngannou versus Rosenstruck and things like that. I think they'll save those fights for the big Saturday night ones. But Tuesday night, you could have, maybe they have 5-6 really good fights. And Tuesday night fights, boxing used to do it all the time. Hey, I got points. I never got congratulations, PBR. I was pretty sure you got points before, but maybe not. All right, next question. This one might be a speed test too. A heavyweight boxer who did WWE and recently said he wants to fight MMA. This is a currently active heavyweight boxer that's done WWE and says he wants to fight MMA. Who is it? PBR Street Gang, 2,000 on the board. You are correct, Tyson Fury. PBR got it just before you, Robert. Just seconds before. Michael Reynolds had it too. And with that, PBR is within 1,000 points of the lead. All right, next question up. Where was UFC 249 originally scheduled? I will take the city or the stadium. The old or the new name. Where was UFC 249 originally scheduled? I will take the city or the stadium. Tell the tape, you are correct. New York, Madison Square Garden, now known as the Hulu Theater. Personally, I don't think you should be able to buy Madison Square Garden. I don't think you should be able to buy the name. Robert said Brooklyn. Oh, it was New York City, Madison Square Garden. Tell the tape. 1,000 points on the board. I think that you should Madison Square Garden. I think they should still call it that. I think they should figure out some kind of way to keep the sponsor in the name and still call it Madison Square Garden. So like Madison Square Garden sponsored by Hulu, something like that. I'm sure somebody could come up with something better than that to still get them their money's worth. But you just can't take away the name Madison Square Garden, not in my opinion. Too many great fights happen there. Yeah, that one would have been interesting. I think a lot of people were nervous about that one because they were worried about them stopping fights early on cuts. All right, we got 2 more questions left. What is the descent of Joanna Jędrzejczyk? Of what national origin is a former women's 115-pound champion Joanna Jędrzejczyk? Tell the tape. You are correct. She is Polish. All right. Oh, PBR Street Gang right behind, just seconds behind. So we could have a tie here. Robert Christian, you can put it away. We might have to go to overtime. You could put it away with the correct answer to 4,000. If PBR or... Oh, you guys were on it. Tell the tape was just a little quicker. Good job, Mika Reynolds. Phone lagged. Oh, crap. Robert Christian, you can put it away, or you win if somebody else gets it besides PBR or Tell the Tape. PBR, Street Gang, or Tell the Tape. Either one of you guys can tie Robert, send it into overtime. Final question. Tony Ferguson is said to have watched this movie on loop during training. And this was via a conversation, I believe it was either on Fox Sports or ESPN with Jeremy Stevens. It would have been ESPN, I guess. Jeremy Stevens said when he was training with him, he loops this movie over and over again. Which number? Which number? I should have said that. Best attitude in the world at the last fight. It is not Rocky 1. One more guess. I'm just going to give you a few seconds. I don't want anybody to Google it. Obviously, there's only so many movies. Tony Ferguson loops this movie during training. Not Rocky 2. It's Rocky 4. It was Rocky 4, but Robert Christian with 3,000 points. You are the winner, PBR Street Gang. And Tell the Tape, great job, 2,000 apiece. And we had Gringo Guerrera had 1,000 in there as well. So good game of trivia, guys. I don't know if you guys think I'm crazy on my my philosophy of what might be going on with UFC 249, but we'll see. Congratulations, Robert. That was Rocky IV, yes. Wish Conor was able to step up and fight Tony Ferguson. What's up, Torrin Brown? Good to see you. Yeah, I think he's in Ireland, so I imagine it seems like just about everybody's on lockdown. So I'm going to play my case again real quick for Tony Ferguson versus Khabib Nurmagomedov going on. And before I say this, before you make fun of me, this is just a wild-ass guess. This is like practically an Alex Jones type conspiracy, but you never know. So when Khabib Nurmagomedov his interview in Russia on Instagram, he couldn't remember when he showed up to United Arab Emirates. He says he thinks the 19th or 20th. But what he says is that the UFC sent him. Conor did take Nate on 2 weeks, though. He says that the UFC told him there's a 99% chance of the fights happen in the United Arab Emirates, 100% not going to happen in the States. Khabib asked the UFC, should I fly to the United Arab Emirates then? They said yes, because he wanted to get acclimated to where he was going to be fighting. So he heads out there almost a month early. Doesn't know when he showed up, but he heads out there a month early. The UFC, in all their infinite wisdom, didn't think it was a good idea to contact anybody from the United Arab Emirates, who obviously would have had to rent them a venue, would have probably put up quite a bit of money, would have been quite the thing to organize this whole thing. But for whatever reason, Dana didn't ask, or the United Arab Emirates decided not to tell them. We're just going to keep that a secret until Khabib gets there. So Khabib gets there, and they say, hey, we're about to lock the country down. This is according to Khabib. We're only going to be letting residents in. So if you're here, you're not going to be able to get out, for one thing. And anybody who's not a resident is not going to be able to get in. So if there's fighters that are fighting you, we're not going to be able to allow them to come in. So unless you want to be stuck here until God knows when, take a hike. So Khabib says he wanted to go back to the United States. That was a no-go. The United States wouldn't let him come back in. He goes to Russia. As soon as he gets into Russia, like that day, they go on lockdown, and now he cannot leave. So that's the story from Khabib. My philosophy is, there's a couple things in my mind. Possibly Vladimir Putin could fly people in, make an executive decision, have the UFC in Russia. There's only 1,800, and I don't want to make light of that, but 1,800 cases of COVID in Russia. They've pretty much, if that's a true number, they're pretty contained compared to the rest of the world. So maybe he flies in some fighters for an event. Or possibly he puts Dana White, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Tony Ferguson. They all just pulled the greatest April Fool's joke of all time. And they pulled the wool over all of our eyes, and they're going to get an unbelievable amount of media because there's no other sports going on in the world. And where it would happen, I have no idea. I know there was odds put out on odds makers. Florida was a 2-1 as of a couple days ago. United Arab Emirates, I thought that was a pretty big long shot, but I can't remember for sure. There was a couple spots in the United States that have been named. I mean, they got 500 people on the beach partying in Florida. They can't have a fight. He also completely ignored Masvidal after a Cowboy took a fall. Interesting theory, Robert. Notice Conor never mentioned Tony after the fight with Khabib, and Tony got canceled. That tells you Conor is scared of Tony Ferguson. Oh, he doesn't want to fight Tony Ferguson. I believe that Conor McGregor would fight Tony Ferguson if he had the championship. He's not going to go out there and risk a fight that tough in this point of his career, though, for a guy that's not the champion. But you're right, even those guys were fighting, and he never said, hey, if Tony wins, I want to fight Tony. So good point, as far as I know. Also, I'm pretty sure Dana has a private jet ski at his darn crib or something. They could make this fight. I'm thinking if Khabib's in Russia, they could make it happen in Russia. Trust me, Dana, he calls up Vladimir Putin, or, he gives a call to Trump, and Trump calls Putin, and they said, let's fucking make this thing happen. Excuse my language, but they got to make this thing happen. Last year, I had mentioned that, when Tony Ferguson tripped on that wire, they waited like an entire week to announce that, so they could announce it on April Fool's. So all of us would think, hey, I don't want to get got. This is most likely an April Fool's joke. And, until late into April 2nd, none of us really believed it. I didn't. I was like, I don't want to get got. This is an April Fool's joke. Of course, it wasn't. Maybe this time they do it the other way. What greater fight would there be to do that with than one that's already been canceled 4 frickin' times? So, I don't know. But, hey, thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope we have some fights to call soon. This weekend, I would like to, assuming that there's the interest, just throw on one of these old Valley Tudos that I have from the 90s. I put Valley Tudo 1 out there. I'd like to put one of these other ones out there and do a live stream while we show the fights, even though they're old. Just so we do something on Saturday. I think that'd be cool. And then I hope we get some actual fights, live fights to call soon. Conor will never fight Tony Ferguson. He's going to always dodge him and take boxing fans in. Keep fighting Nate Diaz. Just keep avoiding real fights. I agree with you, Torin, except for if Tony got the championship. Then I think there's a shot that Conor fights Tony if it's for the belt. Agree, Mike? Putting Dana, Trump can make shit happen. And yeah, they could make it happen if they want to make it. And especially if it happened the way that they're saying it happened, that they told Khabib, hey, go fly to the United Arab Emirates, and then he gets stuck and ends up over in Russia. UFC owes him a big apology. I'm not talking about not double bagging your wine and it breaks on the way home. This is a little bigger than that. This is, hey, why don't you go fly halfway around the world? We're sure enough that we're going to have this fight here. And then you get there and you realize that you could be quarantined in a foreign country for God knows how long, 6 weeks or whatever. Well, I said, the more I think about this, the more I'm starting to believe that there's a good chance that Khabib Nurmagomedov never left the States. I could be totally wrong. I could be crazy. But if somebody was to give me some good odds, I would bet right now that Khabib Nurmagomedov is right in the United States, training right at AKA, and the UFC 249 will Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson will take place on time, and the world's going to be so damn ecstatic. They're going to pay. Everybody's going to order the freaking pay-per-view because they're going to be so relieved that it's not canceled. Still wouldn't fight him even if Tony had the belt, because honest Conor doesn't give a damn about belts. Cares strictly about money. Yeah, I'm probably not, Robert, but I hope so. I hope they're able to make it somehow. I don't know. He really wants to beat Khabib, though. I will say that. Because, according to him, he got paid more to fight Donald Cowboy Cerrone $80 million than he did to fight Khabib, which he said he got $50 million. So I don't know why he wants to fight Khabib except for to avenge that loss, I guess. So, all right, guys. Yeah, I hope that fight ends up going on. But like I said, Saturday we'll do something. I'll put some old fights on. We'll watch the fights live. We'll have some trivia. We'll just check in on each other. Hey, everybody, guys, have a great week. Don't let bad news get into your head. I hope you're all healthy. I hope everyone still has their jobs. I hope things are going well for you. I'm fortunate on this side that I've been able to work through this thing, even though, I've been a bit exposed, to the elements. I've been able to work through it. I'm not out of a job. I'm still able to do this. I have my family, my health, and everything. So I'm feeling very fortunate. What's up, Super Toxie? Keep it rolling. Don't go. Stay a minute. All right, I will stay a minute, and I will give you my harebrained scheme, a couple of them, of what could possibly going on. Super Toxie one just for you. No. So Khabib Nurmagomedov on his Instagram video came out and said the UFC told me that they were sure enough that UFC 249 was going to be happening in the United Arab Emirates, that I flew to the United Arab Emirates. But he doesn't remember what day he left. 19th to 20th. Stay healthy, my brother. Till next time. All right. Thank you, Robert. Congratulations on the trivia. On winning the trivia. So he gets there sometime around the 19th or 20th. He can't remember for sure. He gets in the United Arab Emirates. He's ready to train. He leaves AKA. And they tell him that if you don't leave now, you're going to get stuck here. We're going to lock down the country, and nobody else is going to be able to come in unless they're a resident. So Dana, Tony, all those other guys, they're not going to be able to come in either. And then at that point, he realized he can't go back to the United States. So either he's by Russia, so he's like, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go train in Russia. So he goes over to Russia. And why he would go to Russia, that doesn't really make sense to me either. But except for that's home. So he's going over to Russia. He goes over there and train, and they lock them down too. Now he can't leave Russia. He says UFC 249 will go on with or without me. My harebrained theory is that possibly that the UFC is pulling the biggest April Fool's joke of all time, and Khabib Nurmagomedov is still in the United States hanging out at AKA. I bet once Khabib gets back from Russia, Dana Money Hungry White will make Khabib versus Conor 2. Yeah, something's fishy. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I think something's fishy. And Torin, that's why I said earlier that I do not want to see if Khabib doesn't make it to UFC 249. And I really think that's a big F. If he doesn't make it, I don't think Tony Ferguson should fight anybody that's not named Khabib Nurmagomedov. So I say that Masvidal said he would jump in. You got Masvidal versus Usman. Dustin Poirier says he's ready to go. If you can get him a fight, that'd be great. They already offered Justin Gaethje to Tony Ferguson. I don't know if Gaethje would fight Poirier because he's maybe not a big enough name right now. He wants a title shot. But if he will put that fight together, then hopefully you still have Namajunas versus Andrade. You got 3 gate fights on a card, and you hold over Khabib versus Tony for next time. Wonder if Private Planes can pick him up. That's the other theory that I had thrown out there, Super Toxies. I'm like, if this really happened, what I assume would happen, or definitely could happen, is Dana calls Vladimir Putin, or he calls Trump, and has Trump call Putin and says, hey, we want to get this made. We want to do this card. We want it to be huge, and we want it to be in Russia. Vladimir Putin, poof, makes an executive decision. They fly everybody in. They have this huge fight, huge card that's been canceled 4 times. That's going to be great for a Russian economy that is struggling immensely. I mean, everybody's economy is struggling right now. But if he can make that happen, there's only supposedly 1,800 COVID cases right now in Russia. There's more than that in Washington State. I'm not making light of it, but I could see him flying those people in. Dana White just consistently screws over Tony Ferguson. That is very true, Torin. That is very, very true. I'll be glad when some of the UFC get pissed in the best breaks off of Dana. I just want to see Tony get his title shot. Yes, super title. All right, guys. I said again, thank you very much. We'll do something Saturday. We'll do some live-ish fights. I'll pull a DVD out of some fights that are not copyrighted. Probably some old Valley Tudo that I have from the 90s from a company that's bankrupt now. So I know I'm good on copyrights. We'll do some trivia. And then hopefully we'll be able to do some actual live fights soon. But everybody take care of themselves. Remember, I love you. I respect you. And guys, stay healthy, stay home, and stay clean.